Architectural Builder Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
Door closers.
Corbin rebuilt door closers. Okay, I can try to help.
I'm looking at the list of them on your website, and I admittedly grew up with them in the schools I was in, etc. But I remember that you could reach up and set them to hold a door open if you wanted. But my question is, would it stop a door from blowing open? I mean, does it open to a certain distance and stop?
Well, I mean, so I did not grow up with pot bellies. But the answer is yes. If if that door were to go to a certain degree of opening, the spring is going to stop. Or there'll be a mechanical linkage limitation of the arm.
So can we adjust that and say, I don't want the door to open past this point?
The answer is it can be adjusted by potentially the telescoping function on the forearm of the arm of the closer, but the degree of opening is always set on where you position the closer in relationship to the vertical axis of pivoting. So the further away you put it from the hinge, the more limited the degree of opening becomes.
Oh, simple. Yeah. Okay. Now, I read the manual that you all had, the installation manual, not all the pages display, so I couldn't tell. Let me just click on the very first one here, the 103. And then I clicked on instructions. I was just trying to look for some photos of these things actually mounted on the door and so forth. And it's the little arm is the part that bolts to the door, or does that bolt to the frame and the pot belly travels with the door?
Well, it could be either way. Those pot bellies
Okay.
can be installed on the door or on the jamb, is how those can be done.
And does anybody make a part yet? If I screw something into the doors that we have nowadays, I'm not confident they're going to hold because they're not solid wood all the way through. They have all these energy efficient things with, foam cores and so forth. Now, does anybody make some kind of an interesting looking cast metal plate that goes on the outside and you can actually just put machine bolts all the way through, and that way with this clamp?
No,
I can make them if they don't exist. That's not a problem.
Right. We could make that for you. It's that principle is used on surface-mounted hinges when you're putting a hinge onto a hollow core door. It's just a metal plate that's on the opposite side.
Right.
So I can have someone make something, or yes, make it yourself. Absolutely.
All right. So nobody's making some kind of an interesting looking cast one. There's just not enough demand to make it worthwhile. Yeah. These things are a cast metal and they look nice. They look old timey, and which is why we want to put them on.
But, no, I don't have any.
Yep.
Perhaps that was offered in 1950 or
right.
1940
Correct.
or 1920. But my knowledge isn't intimate when it comes to mid 20th century closer technology.
Now, is there, if we want to go through and order one of these to try it out, I noticed there's hold open and non-hold open. And if that's where I was talking earlier, used to be able to reach up and just hold the door. Like if 100 people were going to go through the door, you'd adjust something and it would just stay open. Does it matter if one of our concerns is the wind blowing the door open against the hinges, and we'd like to mount this in such a position that it stops that as well as then closes the door? Does it matter which we buy?
Well, so unless you're going to purchase a new traditional or potbelly closer from Norton or Yale, any of that stuff you see that's several decades old, it's not for sale. We don't have any of those. The service that we have at this point is to repair yours. So I don't have one of those vintage closers that I could send you.
Oh.
So all
So
that
this
stuff you see there is repair.
Oh, this is to repair some bodies, not these
Yeah.
are repaired ones y'all are selling.
No, they're us taking yours and repairing it and sending it back.
Oh, okay. All right. No, I didn't get that. Okay. No, that's all right. No, I'm looking at this, and for some reason I just thought, oh, these are refurbished and they're being sold. Somebody's got a bunch of them. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So I'm barking up the wrong tree. So I would go look at Yale or Norton for their, new ones.
Yeah, they're the same. You don't have to look at both catalogs. The name is the only difference.
Oh,
Where you'll see those is they don't look exactly like the old Corbins or LCNs or Sargents, but they're certainly quite complementary. They would be kissing cousins. Their shape is a bit different, less 1950s modern cool, in my opinion. Is this a residential application?
yes.
Oh, okay. Then yes, if you want that sort of vintage look, that's where you would turn. It would be the Norton 78 series, is what those are. You might find some of this stuff in the online flea markets of the world, at which point it either works or it doesn't. And if it's the latter, send it to us and we'll rebuild it and make it work like it used to.
But I'd need to make sure I had all the parts and so forth to do
Most
that.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And then there's a mounting bracket, I guess, as well. I see sometimes a big metal mounting bracket you need as well.
Why would you need that? That's called a jam bracket.
I just see them sometimes, and I'm just
Okay.
trying to make sure I know what I would need.
Sure. So a jam bracket is used when you are installing the door closer on the egress or push side of the opening. So in a school, 1940, those doors swing out. Those the bodies are mounted to the jam bracket. The jam bracket is mounted to the hinge jamb, and those doors swing out and away from that installation. So you would want that if your door swung out, and you would obviously want the closer on the inside of the of that opening.
Okay. Let me look around a little bit then, and depending on what I find, I may get back with you. But I thanks for taking the time to educate me and stop me from heading down the wrong trail and get me headed on the right one.
So what year? I mean, you can't be that old to have gone to school, but what year? I mean, because these things were still made in the 70s for sure. Maybe the very early.
Well, I was born in 55, and I grew up in middle central Florida, and everything around me was old. I mean, you would go into old fishing camp. Everything had been built in like 1890, 1910, right. Money wasn't, somebody was awash in money back then. Right. And so things tended to last and not get replaced. And so everywhere you went, you'd look up and here's all this old stuff everywhere. And so when we got this house 5 years ago, we set about remodeling it. We're both Florida people, and we want, why don't we try and make this look like all the old stuff that was along the east coast of Florida and central Florida when we were growing up. And so if you have to put a door closer, well, let's just not go buy a new one. Let's go get one that looks as old as possible and solves the problem. So that became this part of the quest. So.
Yeah, I do think a trip down an internet rabbit hole on the eBays of the world is worthwhile, because maybe avoid the really big Corbins and Russwins and Sargents. Rixson used to make one in the 1920s, 30s, that kind of stuff, and it was smaller. And Yale did too, actually. It's going to give you, I think, that traditional look, that mid-century look, without it being so oppressively huge. There's variations on the size of that. Is what I would say about that. And that's what is interesting about the Florida. I'm on the west coast of Florida. I'm 2.5 hours south of you, and there seems to be today, there's nothing here architecturally that tells me mid-century Florida. It's just such a scatter. If you've got the money, the architect will draw what you tell him, and that doesn't mean it looks good or it belongs, in a Florida coastal environment. So very cool.
Yeah,
I wish you luck, and know that we can repair. Our record is 1904, so if you find one older than that, you'd be the record holder for age of one we've rebuilt. But there you go.
All right. Thanks for the guidance again.
My pleasure, sir.
Have a good
Thank you very much for calling.
All right.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.